Don't bother coming for New Year's. My dad declared coldly. I just smiled and announced, then don't bother using my card. That night, I canceled their gas, groceries, and mortgage autopay and let the cold remind them who was really in charge. I, 32M, never thought the worst family fight of my life would happen over a New Year's dinner invitation. But here I am, 3 days later, watching my parents scramble to figure out why their heat got shut off in the middle of January. It started last Tuesday when I called Mom to confirm what time dinner would be on New Year's Eve. She sounded hesitant, which wasn't like her. She told me to hold on while she got Dad. That should have been my first warning sign. Dad got on the phone with that tone he's used since I was a kid, the one that meant his word was final. He informed me that my girlfriend wouldn't be welcome at New Year's dinner this year. When I asked why, he launched into the same tired speech about how she wasn't family material and how I was wasting my time with someone who didn't share our values. I'd heard this before. My girlfriend is biracial, and while my parents never said it outright, their comments about her hair, her family's different traditions, and their sudden interest in introducing me to their friends' daughters made their feelings crystal clear. I told Dad I wouldn't come without her. Simple as that. His response was ice cold. He declared that if I couldn't respect their house rules, then I shouldn't bother coming for New Year's at all. Mom stayed silent in the background, which hurt almost as much as his words. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, the same one I'd carried through childhood whenever I disappointed them. But this time was different. This time, I had something they'd forgotten about. I smiled into the phone and calmly announced that if I wasn't welcome, then they shouldn't bother using my credit card anymore either. The silence that followed was deafening. See, here's what my parents had conveniently forgotten. For the past 2 years, I'd been paying for almost everything. Their mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, it all ran through my accounts. Dad had lost his job during the pandemic, and Mom's part-time work barely covered their car payments. When they'd struggled, I'd stepped in without hesitation. Family helps family, right? I'd set up automatic payments for everything to make it easier on them. They never had to ask or worry about due dates. The bills just got paid, and life went on. Somewhere along the way, they'd started treating it like an entitlement rather than the favor it was. Dad sputtered something about how ungrateful I was being, but I'd already made up my mind. I told him I'd give them until after New Year's to figure things out, then hung up. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and methodically canceled every automatic payment. Mortgage, canceled. Gas and electric, canceled. Internet, groceries, insurance, all of it, gone. My hands were steady as I clicked through each cancellation confirmation. My girlfriend found me there at midnight, still staring at the screen. She asked what was wrong, and I told her everything. Instead of being upset about my parents' rejection, she was worried about me. She suggested maybe I was being too harsh, that family drama wasn't worth freezing them out literally and figuratively. But I was done being the family ATM while being treated like a disappointment. Update 1. New Year's Eve came and went quietly. My girlfriend and I ordered Chinese food and watched movies. Around 9 p.m., my phone started buzzing with texts from Mom asking if I was coming after all. I didn't respond. The real fireworks started January 2nd. My phone rang at 7 a.m. Mom was frantic, asking why their gas had been shut off. She said they'd woken up to a freezing house and couldn't figure out what happened. The gas company told them their automatic payment had been canceled and their account was past due. I calmly reminded her that I'd warned them I was canceling everything. She begged me to fix it, saying it was below zero outside and Dad's arthritis was acting up in the cold. She promised we could work everything out if I'd just turn the heat back on. I told her I'd consider it after I received an apology for how they'd treated my girlfriend and me. She hung up without responding. By noon, Dad was calling. His tone had completely changed from the commanding voice he'd used earlier. He was asking, not demanding, if we could talk. He said they hadn't realized how much I was doing for them financially, and maybe they'd been too hasty about New Year's. I pointed out that they'd had 2 years to realize exactly how much I was contributing to their household. The only thing that had changed was their heat getting shut off. He got defensive again, claiming I was being manipulative and holding money over their heads like some kind of weapon. I reminded him that he was the one who'd declared I wasn't welcome in their home. I was simply respecting his wishes by not being involved in their lives financially either. The call ended with him muttering about ungrateful children. Update 2. By January 4th, it wasn't just the heat. Their internet got disconnected when the automatic payment failed. Then their grocery store called about a declined card. Apparently, they'd been using a card linked to my account for years without me realizing it. Mom called crying. She said she was sorry, that she'd never meant for things to go this far. She claimed she'd always liked my girlfriend, but Dad was just old-fashioned and needed time. She begged me to at least turn the heat back on while we worked things out. I felt that familiar pull, the urge to fix everything and make Mom happy. But then I remembered every snide comment about my girlfriend's hair, every time they'd changed the subject when I mentioned our future plans, every family photo where they'd somehow managed not to include her. I told Mom that her apologies needed to include my girlfriend, not just me. And they needed to come from Dad too, not just her acting as a go-between. She said she'd work on him. Meanwhile, my girlfriend was getting increasingly uncomfortable with the whole situation. She pointed out that while my parents had been wrong, freezing them out in the middle of winter was extreme. She worried about Dad's health and Mom's stress levels. I appreciated her concern, but I was tired of being the only one who compromised. For years, I'd been the family peacekeeper, always bending to avoid conflict. This time, they needed to bend. Update 3. January 6th brought the call I'd been expecting. Dad, sounding exhausted and defeated, asked if we could meet for coffee. Not at their house, at a neutral location. He looked older when I saw him, more fragile somehow. The cold house and stress were taking their toll. He started by thanking me for everything I'd done for them financially. He said he hadn't realized how dependent they'd become on my help until it was gone. Then came the hard part. He admitted that his objections to my girlfriend weren't really about her character or our compatibility. He'd been raised in a different time, with different ideas about how families should look. He said he was scared about what his friends and extended family would think, which felt stupid to admit at his age. I told him I understood being raised with certain beliefs, but I was 32 years old and didn't need his approval to choose my partner. What I needed was basic respect for both of us. He nodded slowly and said he'd like to meet her properly, not the awkward dinners where they'd barely spoken to her, but actually get to know her. He asked if they could invite us both for dinner the following weekend. It was progress, but I wasn't ready to restore their financial support just yet. I agreed to the dinner, but told him they needed to handle their own bills until I could see that their change of heart was genuine. He didn't argue. Update 4. The dinner was awkward, but better than I'd expected. Mom had clearly coached Dad on conversation topics, and he made genuine efforts to ask my girlfriend about her work and interests. It wasn't perfect. There were still uncomfortable pauses and moments where I could see him catching himself before saying something inappropriate. But it was a start. My girlfriend handled it with more grace than they deserved. She answered their questions patiently and even brought a dessert she'd made specifically to share with them. By the end of the evening, I could see Mom warming up to her naturally, not just because she felt obligated to. Dad walked me to my car afterward and said something that surprised me. He told me he was proud of how I'd stood up for what I believed in, even if it had been painful for everyone involved. He said he'd raised me to have principles, and he couldn't fault me for applying those principles to him as well. 2 weeks later, I restored their heat and electricity payments. Not because they'd begged or because I felt guilty, but because I could see genuine effort on their part. The other bills, groceries, insurance, mortgage, those took longer. Final update. It's been 3 months now since the New Year's incident. My parents' attitude toward my girlfriend has completely shifted. They include her in family texts, ask about her career goals, and Mom even called her directly last week to get a recipe. More importantly, they've started taking responsibility for their own finances again. Dad found part-time work, and they've created a budget that doesn't rely entirely on my support. I still help with the mortgage because I want to, not because they expect it. The best part came last month when Dad pulled me aside after a family dinner. He said he'd been wrong about my girlfriend, that she was good for me and good for the family. He asked if I was planning to propose soon because he wanted to make sure he didn't mess up his grandfather potential the way he'd almost messed up his father-in-law potential. I laughed and told him he'd have to wait and see like everyone else. My girlfriend still thinks I went too far with the financial cutoff, and maybe she's right. But sometimes nuclear options are the only thing that gets people's attention. My parents had gotten so comfortable with their disapproval and my financial support that they'd forgotten those two things were connected. The cold reminded them that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, acceptance, and treating the people you love with basic human decency. even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges your old beliefs. Especially then. Looking back, I don't regret what I did. My parents needed to understand that their son came with conditions, not financial ones, but emotional ones. Love me, love who I choose to love. Accept my decisions as an adult, or accept the consequences of rejecting them. The house got cold for a few days, but our relationships are warmer now than they've been in years. Sometimes you have to break things completely before you can build them back stronger.